Welcome to Built from Scratch. On this show, I interview entrepreneurs under 30 to hear about the stories of their initial success. My goal is to encourage the next generation of leaders to take action and make a difference. I'm Eric Libby. On today's episode, we have entrepreneur Youssef Rezkalla with Genesis Fund. Originally from Egypt, Youssef moved to Dubai at 3 and later came to US in 2021 to study entrepreneurship, innovation, and future technology on a full-ride scholarship at Boston University. A serial founder, his first startup failed dramatically, but his second venture was a successful exit, which led him to join a VC firm as a partner later on. He was a TEDx speaker who spoke about the importance of healthcare over military during the pandemic, and now invests in early-stage companies through the Genesis Fund, helping tomorrow's innovators in the Boston area scale and thrive. Youssef is only 22 years old. Youssef, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for the amazing introduction. I really appreciate it. How are you doing today?
Yeah, doing great. Excited for this one. You have a unique story, Youssef, and one of the things that I've enjoyed is when we speak to some of these founders is like hearing about their initial period growing up. And I think you have a unique one because you were in two different countries. You come to the US, and so how we start every show on Built from Scratch is flashing back to your founder story at the very beginning. You grew up in Egypt and then transitioned to Dubai. I'd love to know, if I was on a fly on the wall, what was I seeing during that time period? What was up to 3 years old? And then as you grew up in Dubai, what did that look like?
Originally from Cairo, Egypt. Couldn't really remember much, 0 to 3, but I moved to Dubai when I was 3 years old. Was initially a swimmer. Growing up, I was a swimmer actually, and fell in love with swimming super early on. My mom kind of forced me into swimming. So I was like a athlete going to school, kid, swam for multiple different clubs in Dubai. Ultimately, one of my biggest accomplishments was swimming in the 2016 World Cup, and that happened in Dubai. Was a great swimmer back in the day, and then I destroyed my MCL and my meniscus at a pretty young age, and then I diverted all that energy into startups. And then that's when I started my first company. So my first company was a health tech that used your biometrics, blood type, and hormone profile to calculate your basal metabolic rate and give you micro and macronutrients based on your genetic profile. So think of MyFitnessPal, tailor it towards your genetics. Came from an athlete background, so I wanted to do something in the health tech space. It was a no-brainer.
Crazy.
So to realize that starting a tech company was actually pretty rough. It sounds all sunshine and rainbows until you got to do the work. And
crazy
work, but I just couldn't execute on the market.
I'd love to know, even before starting that company, you go from Egypt to Dubai in those younger years. What do you remember about growing up in Dubai? Because I feel like that's really interesting. Just from an outside perspective, what was it like growing up in Dubai?
It was great. So Dubai only really became that conglomerate metropolitan city 10, 20 years ago. So I've seen it from literally
nothing to come up, yeah,
from a desert to just a crazy futuristic city. So growing up, life was pretty simple. I'd actually compare it to American style suburbs without all the nature. There's more desert, but there was a bit more based on community, more based on friends that you've had from school or your sports teams. You'd hang out, it was pretty basic growing up there, if I'm being honest, because nothing was booming, and the family style life of Dubai is very different to what you see on social media, what you see on people's Instagram stories, reels. That's a tourist side. But growing up there, life was very safe. It was very stable. Tons of international people, because if you know,
everybody Dubai comes there, right? Major business hub.
The Emirati, so the people originally from Dubai, you can only become an Emirati citizen through blood or by blood. So even me living there, I'm technically not Emirati, and that they only represent 10% of Dubai's population, and the remaining 90% are expats. So everyone who comes into Dubai is super international, people from all sorts of lives. I've interacted with people of all shapes, sizes, colors, everything you can imagine. So it teaches you a lot of things about understanding people and just being a decent and kind human being, because you just deal with so many different.
If I was dropped in, I've been to 3 different countries, so I wouldn't say I'm very cultured. Grew up in the US my whole life, from Minnesota, came to Florida. what am I seeing as like a culture shock as I go to Dubai? Like, what do I say? I'm just like, I'm going to join the school system there. What am I seeing and what do I need to know before like jumping in?
So 2020 plus Dubai, like you're gonna see some crazy stuff, like kids pulling up to school with a G-Wagon with a
Oh
Rolls
my, yeah,
Royce. Like it pretty much became a very flashy status symbol city post the pandemic. Really, that's when a lot of the inflood came up. But when I grew up, it was honestly a pretty simple city, and it was more driven on just more simplistic things like going to the movies or going to have dinner with friends or hanging out at a friend's house. Things that you normally hear about growing up, but nowadays it's all about what watch you're wearing.
who has the most money?
Who has
Yeah,
the most money? The guy next to you. Like if you have this car and he has the same car, sometimes you compete on like plate number. It's
right.
actually insane. In Dubai, this is a saying, but your car doesn't matter. It's your plate number that does. And just to dive in, if the lower digits you have on your plate number in Dubai, the more expensive it gets. And if you're anything below 3 digits, it's actually maybe 5 times the price of your car.
Crazy.
So people
So
like
totally status. It's status based.
yeah. Post pandemic times, like
Yeah.
before I left to the States for college, it was somewhat more like not normal is the wrong word to use, but somewhat more similar to cities in the States or similar to other places growing up. But post pandemic, it was all about status. But
Crazy.
also, you can argue that I come to Dubai back in the holidays, so I only see the more statusy sorts of things. But growing up, I had an amazing upbringing. It's a beautiful place. It's super safe. Everything, you can do anything you really want there. Everything is within arm's reach. It's like a way bigger New York on like a lot, like in terms of size and safer version.
Right on. And before like as we continue with this story, before we get into the actual first business you launched, one of the things you said notably to me in the pre-interview was obviously, I mean, you're with your family, and one of your biggest inspirational role models was your dad growing up. And I'd love to know, maybe connecting that to like future as an entrepreneur, like how did him as a role model start planting seeds for what you would later do as an entrepreneur?
I think, yeah, I would say my dad's my role model primarily because he implanted the seed that imposter syndrome is a fugazi that is made up in your head. He truly believes, regardless of whatever background, age, race, anything, you can achieve anything you put your mind to. And he truly believes it. You know, a lot of people say you can achieve what you want when you put your mind to it and just like spit motivation. He genuinely believes it in his heart. And I think that's kind of where my inspiration came from. I realized at a very young age, I swam pretty professionally. I've started companies, I've started the fund, all because my dad drilled in my head, that you can do anything you want if you're ready to give up blood, sweat, and tears for it. And that's kind of what I look up to him for primarily. He came from a small town called Fayoum, 2 hours outside of Cairo, didn't grow up with much, and he made the big leap to jump to the Middle East in 04, 05, and just worked his ass off and grinded. Like he was a site engineer first, and now he's CEO of a international holding company that primarily does subcontracting. And he's all because he put his mind to it.
Right on.
And that's why he's my role model. He just he proved that anything is possible if you get rid of your imposter syndrome and you put blood, sweat, and tears.
Right on. I remember you told me, Youssef, that you started your first company, was it at 14, I think?
Yeah, I believe around 14, 15.
So I'd love to know what he was saying about like some of those initial ideas he's planting, like, all right, Youssef, this is what you got to do. Like, you got to start the business, start selling stuff. Like, what was he telling you kind of leading up to those moments?
My dad, surprisingly, he's not the type of man to really give much comments. He kind of let me wander around. He was always supportive, and he said, you're doing the right thing. He kind of looks at things from a high level. Like he was judging my character at that age and knowing that these are the characteristics that built a great company. Like, so he would encourage me to be persistent. He would encourage me to work hard. He would encourage me to talk to more people and learn as much as possible. He focused a lot more on the behavioral side of things and nailing those characteristics down, which is ultimately the most important thing when you start a company, because when you're going from 0 to 1, all that matters is that raw fire inside of you that's not going to stop. And like, that's what he was trying to instill in me. He knew like my first company at 15 is not going to be a decacorn or any sort of that. But he knew that if I keep trying and failing, it's going to instill the right values for me, for my second venture, third, fourth, and so on, to actually succeed. Because he believes getting the foundation, the building blocks of the behaviorals right, that's what matters. You build a rock base, then you only go up from there. The rest you just acquire these skills. But
Right on.
fire, hunger, perseverance, willpower, just an iron mind.
So you're growing up in Dubai and you have these good influences around you. Your dad's pushing you, maybe not into business, but he's encouraging you to have good character, push hard. You can do anything you want to. And then at 14, you transition out of I think swimming was it at 14 is when swimming finished, and then you go into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I was thinking about entrepreneurship 14, 15, 16, 15, 16. That's when swimming was done, tore my meniscus and MCL, so could not get back in the pool. And then I just shifted all of that passion from trying to become an Olympic swimmer and swimming professionally to starting my first company. Put all my eggs in one basket there, went on, raised some money, joined multiple venture capital and like accelerator competitions, won some grants, and just couldn't execute on the go-to-market. Just learned a ton.
And so that was one of the quotes you gave me is you couldn't execute on the go-to-market because you were selling to consumers and they didn't have their blood type at home. So I suppose you kind of realized too late. So you failed miserably, but like, was this a hindsight lesson? Like, dang, if I would have gone back, I should have done it different, or was it in the moment, or like, how did you actually come to that realization?
I only came to the realization fairly late of why I failed when I entered venture, but I think it was the biggest blessing. It just makes you tough. Failing and losing other people's money and being somewhat embarrassed of it and feeling that your reputation is slightly ruined, even though you're super young, like it carries a lot of weight on a human being. And by failing, and the comeback's always greater than the setback. Like, that was my mindset. The comeback is always, always, always greater than the setback. So I didn't take this as, oh, entrepreneurship is not meant for me, I should never pursue it again. I took it as, all right, I'm going to get back up and try again. I'm going to get back up and try again. And that's kind of the theme around my life from college, high school, preschool. Like, it's just keep trying again and keep getting up.
And I think it's cool. I feel like, and I don't know the entire situation, but I feel like most of that has to be just like father influenced or family influenced to like have that. And that's so good because not everybody has that, but to have somebody that like really pushes you and like pushes you to get uncomfortable. Like, I'm sure, I would assume during that period you lose all your money, your dad's probably in your ear saying like, hey, you got to keep running, man.
Yeah. Oh, he would not stop. He would say, what's next? What are you going to keep going?
Keep moving.
You just got to keep moving. And I'm like, dude, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I failed. Like, what's next? Like, I can't go do this again. Like, I'm embarrassed. And he's like, he would always, my dad loves to he has a book with metaphor quotes that like, he just writes metaphors and motivation quotes left, right, and center.
Yeah.
And that's kind of his thing. And
very cool.
It grew on to me. I actually do say a lot of these metaphors and analogies and motivational quotes, but I think it's great. It really drilled into my head these behavioral things that are important. And yeah, he was like, all right, when's the next one? You failed. You're going to get back up, or you're going to keep crying. So
what did you take into as you go from company one to later in your high school career, starting Unwritten Lines as a junior in high school? What was like the biggest takeaway you had from 1 to 2? What were after you fell on your face? How did you say this time's going to be different? I learned a lot from my first failure. I knew that I didn't execute on the consumer go-to-market because I actually thought about, like, when I started my first company, I just wanted to make the coolest technology. The second company, I actually had to learn how to monetize. So I decided to start an e-commerce brand to just really learn how to just monetize, because that's nothing but straight monetization. And I love design. I love playing on my PlayStation with my buddies. So my buddies and I were like, why don't we actually create a brand called Unwritten Lines? It sounds cool, A. B, it works with the pandemic perfectly because it's unwritten lines. No one's lines are written. The whole message of the brand is what certain's the uncertain, because we're in such an uncertain time. I want to create a brand that goes around the idea of being comfortable with anxiety and mental health and
all that sort of stuff. So we call it unwritten lines because no one's lines are set.
Mhm.
And we're like, all right, we want to start a clothing line. How do we do that? We go on Google, and then I tell my friend, you got a design? He's like, yeah. He goes on Photoshop, makes some designs. We keep iterating on that together until we landed on a couple of designs. And then we went out, figured out the manufacturing, ordered a sample of 500 items first time, and then just sold out the first season within a week or
Hmm.
two. And then did it again 2, 3, 4 more times. And then we sold the brand to a local streetwear company.
Crazy. If someone's like wanting to start a e-commerce brand, or this is probably applicable across multiple industries, but order wise, how did you think about getting your product manufactured and then selling? Like if you're going to put an order for 500 together, talk to a vendor, like that's going to be pretty expensive. Are you putting this out there first, seeing interest, and then buying all the product? Or like walk me through the steps for somebody that's first starting, like
You
what
can.
should they do?
You should always gauge interest when you're building something. But for the clothing line, I just thought it was cool. And we obviously asked a few friends what they think of the designs. But if I sat down and tried to talk to everyone on the planet and ask them what they thought, I would never get shit done.
Hmm.
That was kind of my thinking. It's like, this is cool. We're gonna try one batch. If it works, we're gonna do a second batch. If it doesn't work, I learned.
Hmm.
That was the thought process. I was like, I always wanted to start a clothing line because I just love design and I'm pretty big into streetwear. I wish I could show you what I'm wearing now, but pretty big into streetwear. Love design. Love just doing work with my boy. Like at the end of the day, it was just we never thought of this as a company. We kind of just wanted to launch a line, and then line one did well, then two and three followed on, and four, and then yeah. So my advice would be a gauge that there's a need in the market,
Hmm.
and then B, don't think too much and just go for the
Just
kill.
go. So it's almost like a passion met with like a
Intuition.
intuition, but more so like even to add on, it's like what you were selling to people at this time was an idea, because it's like there's hundreds of clothing lines, hundreds of e-commerce, different options, people throwing stuff out there. Obviously, you were confident in your product, but I would love like going back to when you were selling this. What was the message that you were pushing to like get these sales? Like, because it sounded like it cleared and then it cleared again and then it cleared, like all the inventory was gone. How did you position this? And I would assume as some brand identity, like this is what we believe in, this is what we're hoping you believe in, but like show us what that was. What did you do for that?
Yeah, it was both inbound and outbound. Being honest, like you, I would still have to go out and sell and go the product. I was not fully inbound, just to put out there. But I mean, I feel like the brand, the way it stood out was it was just we aimed to create a community under the theme of uncertainty, and that was the main messaging of the brand. That what's certain is the uncertain. We made that very applicable. Our designs were all like based off like mental health mental health imaging, and that was kind of the product side of things. But we just went out and sold. Like we would go to schools, we would go to friends, we would send it in WhatsApp group chats, we did everything. Every medium we got our hands into, we made sure that everyone had the link and we had as many eyeballs, and we would make people talk about it. We would give it to the most popular kids in school to wear it for free. And we just hustled. Like
Beautiful.
we sold out because we
Yeah.
hustled, not because of the brand name. If we just released the brand name, then there's 1,000 other people who are so much better in design than us
Sure.
who would have
Yeah.
killed it. But we just every single medium we got our access to, and every single person that we spoke to, we made sure that they send it to 3 to 4 or 5 people. And then when you have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people looking at it, and you just do the conversion of 1, 2, 3% converting, you get customers. It's a volume game.
So you go through these iterations and you sell out consistently and finally get enough traction where there's a company that wants to buy you. And so how did you go from making sales, generating money for you to like, all right, let's exit this? Like, I want to know how you got to that point. Like, this is the time. And then what did that actual process look like for someone that might want to sell their company at some point?
I mean, this one was easy because we had a competitor brand who was staying in the Middle East, that was also started by people around the same age. So we really had to sell because we were going to college and I was pretty dead certain on coming to the States. And if I wanted to keep making this big, I'd have, as you know, you have to be all in, boots on the ground, doing it. And my partner wanted to also go to college in the UK. So it was a decision where we just came to a conversation of like, this is our brand value X. Do you want to buy it or not? Or we're going to keep coming for your necks. We're just threatening them to buy it. But in reality, we were going to leave anyway. So we are going to leave profitable or we leave with an exit. And I don't know if that should be said, but.
But you sold the company. You sold the company. And then.
Yeah, and it was just a mutual agreement. Someone bought it. Can't disclose it, all that stuff, but another brand bought us. And I mean, anyways, we would have made great amount of cash just being positive generating company. So
sure.
That was never the all goal. Like this clothing line was more of a passion project that went on to become a company. And that's why I encourage a lot of young entrepreneurs to just like anything you like doing that doesn't feel like work, you just never know where it could end up. And when you have like that hunger inside you and you see that progress, just keep going after it. That's why I'm a huge advocate for try as many cool things in your life as possible. At least the worst case, you leave with a cool story.
Right on. So after you spend time in Dubai, you go through high school, you have a failed startup and then a successful one that exits. You end up deciding to come to Boston University in 2021 to study entrepreneurship, innovation, and future technology. And one of the cool things is you got a full ride, from what I understand, to go there. What did you hope with that full ride? What were you going to get? What did you want to learn during your time at Boston?
Yeah, I mean, the scholarship I got, the trustee scholarship, it was given to 20 kids out of like 11,000 who applied during my year. So it felt great. It felt great, man. Like college in the States is so expensive, especially for international students. So I saw my dad's face get released when he knew I'd have to pay that much for college, but he was super proud. I mean, what I really wanted to get the most out of Boston is just being around kids who are 100 times smarter than me. Some of the brightest minds walk these streets every single day. You got the kids at Harvard, MIT. I mean, Microsoft was started here. Facebook was started here. Scale, Stripe, Cognition, Cursor, Mercor recently. Like everything. Every great company or most great companies, the inception has some sort of route to Boston's academic institutions just because of Harvard, MIT, Northeastern, Babson, BU, Tufts, Boston College, all these great schools in a very dense area. Like Boston's so small, like you can walk from one end to the other and it'll take you a couple of hours.
How close are all the schools together to Youssef? Like how far is Harvard from Yale from...
Like it's like a maybe 10-mile radius max. Like all
the Ivy schools.
All like Harvard, MIT are literally a 10-minute drive from each other. BU to MIT is like a 5 to 7-minute drive. Like the BU to Northeastern is like a 15-minute drive. So it's all super clustered. So you getting access to talent is so easy because everyone around you is incredibly smart. So that was the biggest reason I wanted to come to Boston. It's very safe. It's very clean relative to other cities in the States. And it's just full of genius-like people.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you got that after? It's like that was your intention going in and then you fast forward 3-4 years and it's like, did it exceed what you were originally expecting? Yeah.
There are some kids here, man, that I've seen and you wouldn't even think they're real. Like there's some brilliant kids coming out of academic institutions.
Where it's like, 10 years from now, they'll be the ones that we watch on TV.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, cool. While you were at Boston, you also had a couple internships and other job opportunities. So a couple things like working with Deloitte and then also doing some work for other venture capital funds. What did you learn from both of those before we get into the big juicy part of our podcast here?
Yeah. I mean, freshman year, I came to the States. Obviously, everything was super new to me. I was like, "This is insane. This is day and night difference to what I'm used to."
Yeah.
So spend some time freshman year really navigating the culture, meeting people, meeting friends, joining clubs on campuses, meeting the right people. Ended up working for Deloitte freshman year, and I realized that God, I am never doing this in my life again. This is awful. Like this was awful. It was an awful experience. God bless Deloitte and everything about it, but that thing sucks, honestly. So yeah, so I realized that I loved building. I loved 0 to 1. I didn't have an idea and I didn't know what I wanted to do. Just by sheer luck and networking, I ended up having a summer opportunity at a venture fund based in Dubai. And then from there on, just fell in love with the idea and just kept racking up venture experiences. So I worked for 5 different venture capital funds, 2 in Dubai, 1 in London, 2 in SF. And yeah, did everything from pre-seed to Series A. Led a few deals at the funds I've worked for before. Contributed to a few, and yeah, that's kind of where I realized I love venture. I was just like kept racking these experiences and didn't feel like work anymore. And I was like, this is awesome.
And so in November of 2024, I'm gonna read this quote actually, but this is the timeline that this crazy thing happened. So you told me this in our pre-interview, Youssef. You said the best founders in Boston are never caught by local VCs because the best talent is on campus, and the best Boston-based funds are 50 and 60-year-old guys who make their money and sit in the offices on Newbury Street. So you see this potential opportunity. So what do the first steps in business look like?
I mean, you just have to have a certain access to, I mean, venture is a game of capital raising and access to talent, right? Like you raise money and you deploy money and hopefully the money you deployed initially 10x's. So I realized that there's a gold mine here, the tech talent on these campuses. So what I did was just became friends with these guys and just offered to help with 0 strings attached every single time until I realized that I had an army of talent underneath my belt, and then decided to monetize that. Decided to raise a fund and just do a better job than any other fund around, and just be boots on the ground, be close to the founder, be in the trenches with them. And that establishes a sense of respect. When you're on campus, when you're hustling for these deals, when you're building your own venture fund and it's your fund one, the founder doesn't view you as a VC and a founder anymore. It just becomes we're both founders. We both see eye to eye. We both respect each other's hustles. I'm not here sitting in a fancy office somewhere. I'm actually in the trenches with these founders, and they respect that. And founders will take your money any day of the week because they see that you're in the same grind as them and you understand them. And also being a previous founder, that also helps, establish that sense of respect. The biggest misalignment in venture today is like people in venture place bets as if they're placing bets on horses, which horse is going to win. Very, very few venture funds treat them like human beings. And that's what separates Genesis from other funds is we treat them like human beings. These are our friends. We're a friendship, not a partnership. And you always go above and beyond for your friend compared to a business relationship every single time.
Sure.
So we outwork everyone. We're a fraction of the check with a fraction of the resources. We treat them like human beings and we focus on the intangibles. And that's all that matters. Just be a decent human being that's willing to go to war for founders, regardless if you invest or not. That creates a positive feedback loop in the ecosystem and then just boosts Genesis. And we're known as like the boys, like we're friends.
The boys.
We're the boys we see. But Genesis it sounds cooler.
So you're working with some of these other founders in the area, and you talked about like you didn't have maybe a ton of money, but you were investing like at the very, very beginning. Like I know this story may be different now, but like did you bootstrap? Did you take outside investment to redeploy that capital? Did you take that from investments you made previously that you just had enough money? Or like how did you fund some of these businesses where it was notable enough like you are going to get a chunk of their company for investing?
I mean, we went on and raised money, man. That was it.
So even from the very start, it was like, we're going to go raise money to do this.
Yes. I mean, yeah, there was no other way to do that. So
interesting.
We went, raised a couple of, raised some money, invested in a few companies, and then just kept raising. And we've invested in 3 companies so far. I don't know how much we can disclose on a podcast, but one of them is skyrocketing. One of them is doing incredibly well. And then 2 are doing incredibly well. One is skyrocketing. And then those kind of drove more attraction.
Investment. Wow.
It becomes a chicken and egg problem. You find the best founders, more investors want to put money in your fund. More investors that put money in your fund helps you find better founders. And then it just becomes a chicken and egg thing.
Is that typical? Because and maybe our listeners may not be super enlightened on what the venture process looks like. I know at least I'm not. Is it typical to receive investment into a fund to then redeploy that investment again? Is that a typical setup, like when someone's starting a fund?
Yeah, when you're starting a fund, you go on, you have your fund thesis. So every general partner would have a thesis on what they wanted to invest in. My thesis was Boston has incredibly outlier talent that gets lost to Silicon Valley, because that's where most of the money is. So why not give a small initial check into these guys to keep the lights on as they drop out and go to Silicon Valley? Because they're going to go to Silicon Valley regardless. So that was my thesis, was the best student founders will go to Silicon Valley. So why not catch them before they go to Silicon Valley while they're in Boston? Because Harvard and MIT are behemoths of schools for producing incredible founders. And yeah, so I came up with my thesis. I've taken over 1,000 LP calls, gotten hundreds of no's, and just kept persevering. And ultimately, it's a 99 no, 1 yes game, and then you keep rinsing and repeating that process.
And typically, Youssef, when thinking about your business model, you guys make money when they exit, or is it spitting off cash flow as in like a dividend, or how do funds typically make money? Like what is your monetization strategy?
Yeah, so typical venture funds, they follow something called the 220 model. So you take 2% of management fee per year of the fund size, and that's just basically to run the show. Salaries, expenses, so on and so forth. And then you take, after, that's where the big money is made, is in the carry. After usually 7 to 10 years, when a company exits, then you pay back your investors the original dollar amount, and then anything over if you gave me $100 and I returned $200, I have to pay you back your $100 first, and then you take 80% of the second batch of the $100, and I take 20% on top.
If you have 20% of the company.
No, it's a 20% of the carry of the model. So okay. So you get a group of investors, like let's say 10 Erics put in $100 each. I would pay out all these 10 Erics as $100 first, and then any dollar made above, I take 20 cents on the dollar, and then you take 80 after that.
Okay.
Like a commission-based model.
Gotcha. Okay. And that's something like when you're first establishing these deals and talking to these founders, it's like you set those terms up front. Like, this is the model. You both go back and forth, and like here's agreement. So when you exit, here are the terms laid out. So when that does happen, like you guys do return the 20 cents on a dollar.
The founders don't really care for that. The founders need the money, so they go to VCs to raise. And then, VC money is commoditized to the max. So the best founders, they pick strategically. But the founder, at the end of the day, you put in a check at a certain valuation, you get a certain ownership, but that has nothing to do with the LP side of things. You have to be able to pick the right company so you can have the highest exit, so you can return money.
Right on.
So they're completely separate in that sense. You're the middleman between the capital providers and the people you invest in.
Got it. So when you're seeing all this talent in that Boston area, whether it's Harvard or your college at Boston, or the other Ivy League schools there, what are you looking for in one of the businesses that you're choosing? Out of the hundreds that are there, what does your company specifically look for?
Yeah, we think of our investment on a normal distribution curve or outlier curve, whatever you want to call it. So we think of outlier talent. What do we think of outlier talent? So computing Olympiads, math Olympiads, stats Olympiads, graduated high school at 14, built robots in my mom's basement, exited a company in high school, did research at a research lab. Outlier talent that you can objectively be wow, this guy's an outlier. And then the other side that I really like to focus on is the trauma, adversity, battle scars piece. So you want to look for founders who've had some sort of adversity in life, because that gives them a massive chip on the shoulder. You pair someone with a figure it out, never take no for an answer mindset with being technically brilliant, it's wraps.
So obviously that's been how you've doing this now and looking for your talent. How has that fundamentally changed since the beginning? Back in November when you were just getting this started, was that always the case?
I just the way I grew up, it was drilled into my head that people got that dog in them always win. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You don't need to have the most resources. That all doesn't matter. If you got that dog in you and you're willing to run through a wall 10 times to get your way through, if you have that attitude where you're going to keep knocking on doors till the door opens until you have to fucking kick it down, then you kick it down. But that's the attitude that most successful people portray and they win. It's just an absolute sheer of hunger that there's no option for them to fail. Like when you talk to them, there's literally no option. They're going to do whatever it takes to get there. And that's kind of the common trait I look for in founders before, like what internships they had, or if they've worked at Google or Microsoft or Citadel, or all of these are good signals of technical talent. But what really moves the needle for us at Gen is if they got that dog in them and they're nice with it.
How like the interview process to try and vet some of these companies that want to work with you? Are you meeting with them like 10 times, 15 times back and forth, like before you pull the trigger and like, all right, this is the option we're going with? How do you make sure that they have the dog? Like just talking to them, how do you know that?
It comes down to a lot of repetition. You kind of pattern recognition is one side of it, and intuition and EQ, that's one side of it. But we aim to become friends. That's why when I say we invest in people, we invest in them as our friends. You know, people with similar characteristics hang out with people with similar characteristics. So we just we get to know them on a personal level, and learn what wakes them up in the morning. And then we put it in check. We just want to know them as a raw person without their business, what their morals are and what they stand for. And that's how we can do a lot of our diligence. You have to know them for a very long time.
To transition a little bit, I'd love to know about your partners, Youssef. So I know you have a few partners that you work with at the fund making decisions. I'm sure there's a lot of back and forth, maybe disagreeing opinions going back and forth. Like, how do you, in a successful way, how have you worked with your partners? What are some of the characteristics that you need to embody, your partners need to embody to like get along, make good decisions? Like, I suppose, again, tell us like behind the scenes, what are some of those things that you have to do?
I'm a firm believer in life that 2 is always better than 1. And or 3 or 4, whatever team size you have, it's always better to do with someone except doing it by yourself. The biggest and most important thing is like we have respect amongst each other's strengths and weaknesses. Like I know if I have a blind spot, my partner will be covering, and vice versa. You know, it's that mutual respect of, you know, and also flexibility and freedom. A lot of people think that you have to be, you know, suffocating. You just give someone their flexibility. Everyone operates differently. Some people are more morning people, some people are more night people. As long as the work gets done to a high standard and people are finding companies and getting investment for the fund, then don't question. Just keep doing your thing, because everyone operates differently. But fundamentally, respect is what helps us as a team win.
Have you ever had a time where you were thinking about investment, you maybe were a hard yes, and another one of your partners was a hard no on it?
Oh yeah.
And so what does a conversation look like when that's happening? How do you respectfully disagree or have respect for one another when you're like way on polar opposites?
That's why there's a majority vote on investment. And thank God, like it never had to get to a point where we're making an investment decision and someone's so no. We have people that are like on fence, but you just have to try communicate your point and show them your perspective on how you think it grows. Because early stage investing is super subjective, right? Like what my co-founders and partners look for in a company is different to what I look for in a company. And there's no playbook, right? There's no startup book on how to become $1 billion company, right? Like everyone's done it differently. So it's super subjective. So if you're a hard yes and someone's a hard no, you try to show them the hard yes, and then they'll try to show you the hard no. And then you kind of go back and forth to find the medium ground. But worst case scenario, it just becomes a vote.
Just in keeping an open mind. So it's like being able to like have your hard point of view, but be willing to listen to the other's opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Another thing I think is important to founders, entrepreneurs is like the metrics behind a business is what we're tracking, what grows the business, what are the non-important metrics. And so you've had now 2 sides, because you've seen this as an entrepreneur and you've seen this now as being in VC and venture and investing in companies. What do you think are the most important, maybe 3 to 5 metrics? And obviously it differs by industry, but some of the most important metrics that you've seen that founders should be tracking and they should know very well.
I mean, I do pre-seed investing, so my metrics are completely different, but in the basic sense of realms, like annual recurring revenue, week over week, day over day, month over month growth. If it's consumer, like what's your customer acquisition cost? If it's more B2B play, how fast, how aggressive is your growth? How big are your average contract values? How quickly can you scale Primarily is annual recurring revenue, week over week or month over month or day over day growth, whatever you measure that in. And how diversified is your revenue is another good one, because you don't want to have $1 million contract and it's like by one person.
That's all, right?
I mean, these are like the hard metrics, but in pre-seed investing, like I monitor week over week agency. How fast do they get back to replying? How fast every week are they getting new milestones? Well, are they, every time I speak to them, is there something new that's happening? You know, because in pre-seed investing, it's like it's more on the team and the characters of the team more so than the revenue, because most pre-seed companies, or at least when we come in at the angel inception, don't really have much revenue.
It's small, right? So pre-seed is like very minimal, like customer research phase maybe, but it's not like they haven't figured out their model.
You have like an MVP with the traction points, like some sort of like letters of intent, a bunch of users who are like still about to convert. Like, you know, you don't have real numbers yet, but you have interest through objective measures. That's pre-seed. And then seed is when you kind of solidify more of those, like engage interest people to actual bigger contract. And then series A and beyond, you're just scaling.
Totally different, right? And so what are you looking for your deals? Like those are some of the important metrics. Is that you look for agency of them responding, and then the ARR, like those are the key things. When you go into a deal, you're like, all right, we need to have this criteria. That's like your checklist that you're going down. Is there anything else that you look for?
No, I just look for the story and the why. I want to psychologically understand why this person is building.
So the person, that's what I'm hearing more, is the person's the most important thing when you're investing at your stage.
Yeah, I mean, the idea shifts 100 times. I just want to know if I'm backing this person, he either going to die to make this happen or it happens. And then I don't have to worry about anything else.
So now to more talk about you specifically, Youssef, and some of the things that you've gone through as an entrepreneur and now in venture capital. What do you think has been the hardest experience, as in the story that you've had to go through as an entrepreneur up to this point? So something you can reflect back on, like, man, I was tested. That was super difficult. I was questioning a lot of things, but I made it through.
Yeah, man. The biggest test is when the closest people to you doubt you. The closest people you would have thought would get you back, doubt you. That's probably the biggest lesson. And then the people you just met support you. That's kind of been the closest lesson. You know, there's people who have been incredibly close, who've seen me from a kid to when I was till I'm in college and graduated college. And then you would think, oh my God, they've seen my whole story. They've seen me transition. They've seen me grow. They'll definitely back me. You'd be shocked, man. That's kind of been one of the toughest learnings. So then there's one person you meet for half an hour and he's like, I'm putting in $500,000 or $1 million. Like it's completely, and then just opens your mind.
Do you remember, was there a specific time, Youssef, where it was maybe you're working on second company, you're starting VC, we were like, I'm so excited to share this with someone, and then it's just like, whoa, like, was there a specific moment you remember?
Yeah, the venture fund has by far been my biggest like project or like biggest business to this day. Like the companies I started in high school were nowhere near the same volume and the same all-inness I'm in right now. This is the last thing I'm going to do in my life, you know, if it's Genesis. So ton of times. I have one family and friend that's an LP in this fund. Outside like parents, there's just one person and everyone else said
that's
no.
Good.
The closest people to you would say no. That just gets you guns blazing, ready to load the semi-automatic and spray the
biggest chip on your shoulder ever.
Yeah.
When you think about your entrepreneurial roller coaster, all the highs and lows, as we've already had this conversation before this, even hopping on a podcast here, but you talked about last time that we spoke is a lot of times our emotions can be like this. So we have these big spikes. 1 minute we're good, next minute we're down, next minute great news, back and forth. I'd love to know, on that entrepreneurial roller coaster, what are you doing when things are good and you want to just keep head down, like you want to keep staying in that good vibes or making progress? Like, what are you doing to keep that going? And then on the flip side of it, when things are bad, what are you doing to get out of that rut, to get back up to that point where you're at least on that stable-minded emotionally almost?
Yeah, I mean, you don't let the highs of highs get the best of you, and you don't let the lows of lows get the best of you either. You can be thinking you're God one day, and then you can be feeling like a scumbag the next day. You have to always try to level your playing field and be like, all right, this is temporary. These highs, I'm temporary, and these lows are temporary. And like you try objectively just keep moving forward with as least emotions as attached. You don't want to be an emotional founder. That's the worst thing in the world. And everyone is prone to being emotional because that's your whole life, right? You dedicate your whole life to a single goal. Like, of course, you're going to get emotional, but the most emotional people never do the best. Like, you want to be able to be stoic and be able to be disciplined enough to know that this is just part of the process and kind of zoom out and see from a bigger picture that, all right, this is just a tough period. This is a tough patch. I'm going to get through it. Or this is a happy period, and that happiness and dopamine is going to go away fairly quick. You know, when you're raising money, you get a check, 2-3 days, you feel like king of the world and back down again, you know? So you just have to be able to enjoy the highs of the highs and enjoy the lows of the lows.
Oh, is there anything tactical or specific that you do when you get down? It's like having that mindset, maybe for somebody listening to this is like, they're in that place. That may be tough just to say, yep, like gotta be good. But is there anything that you've done specifically that you've seen like, okay, I go to that place as much as we don't want to be there, we still do go there. And it's like going on walks or journaling or like going to work out and then like being able to reflect while you're doing it. Like, is there anything tactically that you're doing?
Working out's a must in this entrepreneurial.
Yeah. You broke your hand doing it. You were like really pushing the limit.
Yeah, no. Working out is by far the biggest regulator to emotion because it releases natural dopamine. And I'm blessed enough in my life to have someone who's just always there for me on the lows of lows. And she's been incredible. Like, she's always there.
So having people to talk to as well when you go through those moments, having people
the girlfriend, the boyfriend, whatever, like someone who's just there for you on the days where you don't want to keep doing it goes a long way.
So when we fast forward to what Genesis Fund looks like at the very top of its game, you accomplished your mission, your life goal. Everything happened exactly how your vision was set out.
Nah, man, we're just getting started.
Paint me that picture though. When we get to that point, 50 years into the future, what does it look like? Perfect form. What have you guys visioned out as like, this is what success means to Genesis Fund?
Success to Genesis Fund means that for every human being that I've interacted with or Genesis has interacted with, we get rid of their imposter syndrome and fully convince them that anything is possible. It goes back to the same lesson my dad told me. That's what success means to me. And metrically, we're coming for Sequoia and Andreessen's head.
And YC's coming down too.
They're all coming down.
So, Youssef, how we finish every episode on Built from Scratch is with the quote that means the most to the founder. You had a very simple quote. I loved it. It was just like, and sometimes simple's better. I'm going to read it for you, and I want you to tell me a couple of things, but I'm going to read it first. Against all odds. Simply that. Against all odds. Now, I want you to tell me what that quote means to you and how the next generation can take this quote as a means of encouragement to go out, beat their imposter syndrome, or just simply doing something big in the world we live in today.
Starting a company, you have every odd against you. If you start thinking about this mathematically and you're too smart about it, you're never going to get shit done. You have to have an against all odds mindset. You only have to be crazy delusional to make stuff happen in this entrepreneurial scene or the venture capital scene or the tech startup or starting a small business. Like, every odd is against you. Like, that's why most people are their employees and not business owners, because you have every odd against you. So this is why it's my best quote. Like, you just got to be against all odds. You got to defy every single odd and just come out on top and just believe that even if it means if you have 0.1% chance of being successful, you better hold on to dear life. That you're going to do everything you can to make it from 0.1 to 1% or from 1 to 10 or 10 to 50, you know? So just live your life against all odds and defy the odds and write your own story.
Everybody, that is Youssef with Genesis Fund. Youssef, if they are a Boston startup, want to get in touch with you, or just anyone that wants to learn more, where do you want them to find you?
It's Youssef, so YOUSSEF at genesisfund.co. I reply to every cold email that comes my way.
Beautiful. Youssef, love the story. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.